Madam President, I have listened to a couple of presentations today, and at some point I had to remind myself that that is not the month of May, which we traditionally consider reading month, where we listen to and we also engage in stories and reading to children. I just remind myself that we are in the Senate and we are going to be discussing, or we are deliberating on the Appropriations Bill 2020-2021. Now, Madam President, a debate on the Appropriations Bill is supposed to be a debate that focuses on policies of the government and also tells us how the government intends to implement those policies, how they allocate resources, and we come to the House to decide whether we agree with some of the policies. If we have seen gaps, the opposition can highlight its concerns, the government can justify these policies, and we can have a discussion. However, what I have seen, Madam President, thus far is that we have engaged in something that appears to be a campaign, a new form of election campaign in the Parliament. And I don't think that this is what this Honorable House is about or should be used for. So, Madam President, I will attempt to speak to the bill, and I will also, as I mentioned, seek to identify specific aspects of the policy pronouncements made by the government, some of which were made through the Prime Minister, some through other members of the government side, and including the Prime Minister's budget address, copy of which we all have, and to express my own views, my sentiments, and perhaps a few suggestions about what has happened. Madam President, it is very clear that most of what we've heard from the government appears to be a list or a number of initiatives that are based on constituency or constituency-based projects. My colleague, leader of government opposition business, described it as concrete and steel and, drains and roads. But it is clear that the focus of the 2020-2021 Appropriations Bill has really been about government initiating projects, if not to save some seats, but to appease the populace or the population. Madam President, this budget does not appear to be suited to respond to a post-COVID situation. We all have agreed in this Honorable House and elsewhere that our country has faced a serious challenge because of the advent of COVID-19. And we would expect that any budget that is presented in this time will have some form of response to the current environment and would focus on a post-COVID type of response. So, Madam President, I would expect that at this time that this is what the budget would have done. But we must remember that it has become very difficult for the government to respond because of the decisions they made pre-COVID. And of course, the government was in office approximately 4 years, just about 4 years, before that predicament came about. And so, Madam President, some of the things that caused that would be the excessive borrowing that the government engaged in, that they were cautioned about. The opposition, members of civil society, friends of the country, people who were responsible and were concerned about the future of our country, cautioned the government about the excessive borrowing that took place and the overambitious projects that the government undertook that landed us in lots of debt. So, Madam President, 4 years on, the government, in its quest to achieve some of its ambitions that were not in sync with the vision of the rest of the country, had borrowed so much that they even had to go to the NIC. And as we know, Madam President, the government becoming cash-strapped, going to the NIC, which is not in its formation, the NIC was not designed to become a borrowing entity or a financial cash cow for any government. The NIC was designed as a social safety or social safety net for retired citizens, a government facility that can help to put monies aside to pay for our pensions and provide our citizens with some measure of comfort and assurance. But, Madam President, because of the practice of the government in engaging in those wasteful, irresponsible decisions of borrowing and spending, we have now found ourselves in the predicament that we are today. It is no wonder that what you are seeing now is a desperate attempt by the government, through both the lower house and the Senate so far, to try to throw out quite a few nice-sounding ideas and projects that are intended to appease the electorate. Madam President, I think that the cancellation, for example, of the PPP that we have spoken about in this House before, in favor of over $500 million, which we can almost say is about a third of the GDP, to construct the airport, is one of those examples that I spoke about. Madam President, we also realized that during the few months that we were on lockdown and that schools were out, that the government realized that it would have been better if they had invested previously in the laptop program that became a serious issue when our students were home and needed to engage in e-learning. So all of these challenges that we faced during the COVID period were brought about because of the way the government operated pre-COVID. So there was a pre-existing condition that was created, Madam President, by the behavior of the government. And so in 2020, 2021, which basically is the government's final fiscal year, you have a desperate attempt to get everything done that was not done in the 4 years to happen in 1 year. We just heard from the Minister for Justice that the impact situation will be handled by the end of or before the elections. We are talking about something less than a year to go, Madam President. So is the government trying to convince St. Lucians that it can achieve 5 years' work in 1 year? I don't think we are, and I think St. Lucians have learned. So, Madam President, all this budget has done is to expose the government's wrongdoings and to allow us to see the government for what it truly is. So, Madam President, let me just go to a few areas that I believe the budget spoke to, either by the pronouncements by various heads, ministries, as well as the Prime Minister's pronouncements, and seek to examine how those pronouncements are either impractical, unrealistic, and are not achievable. I'll begin, Madam President, with sustainable development. We were told by the minister responsible that the government of the United Workers' Party is known for doing. Madam President, I want to ask, for doing what? Is it for doing nothing about the Dennery wind farm project that the government in 4 years has failed to capitalize on, that could have provided us with alternative methods of using renewable energy? Madam President, what is the government's pronouncement? What can the government say that they have done if the whole point is that it's a government of doing? Doing nothing about having a clear education plan for the country, and doing nothing about doubling the transportation subsidy that I have heard several times being referred to in this Honorable House, even this morning. Madam President, I want to re-emphasize, and I've said it before, that this is not the case. What has happened is that the government has replaced and not doubled drivers who were perceived to be supporting the Labour Party with drivers who were perceived not to be. But the overall number of students on that program or drivers providing that service has not doubled. And I think the government needs to stop saying that to the people of St. Lucia. And it's not the first or the second time it has happened. So the government has done nothing about that. Madam President, doing nothing. Again, it's supposed to be a government of doing, but I say doing nothing. Doing nothing about the ability to sustain the laptop program that I mentioned. And let me say a little bit more about that, Madam President. That program, when it was designed, it was envisaged, or it was perceived. The point of that program was to empower every single St. Lucian child, regardless what school you attended, what part of the country you're from, what profession your parents held. Every St. Lucian child would have been empowered with a learning tool to facilitate e-learning or to facilitate technology being used to enhance their learning. Every single child. So, Madam President, the reality that we faced during COVID-19 was that this exposed the government to the extent that officials of the Ministry of Education were calling on private citizens to assist. So, Madam President, it is very clear that the government has not done anything to change or improve that situation. Instead, what we see, and I want to refer to page 19 of the Prime Minister's budget speech, Madam President. On page 19, the Prime Minister in his speech indicated that his government views education as a basic human right. It is there on page 19. The government, or his government, views education as a basic human right. Madam President, yet it is this same government that has done nothing to sustain a program that was ensuring that every St. Lucian child had the right to own an electronic device for learning. What have they done? The direct opposite of what the Prime Minister is saying. And that is, selected schools are being given e-books. Selected schools. Not every school, not every child. And so how could you tell me that you want to speak of the rights to every child, everybody's basic human rights? This speaks to the matter of equity, Madam President, equity of access to resources, and only some are able to access a device or something that has less capability than something they were already getting. And I've said it in the House before, Madam President, that e-books can be accessed through a laptop. So if the government can tell our children that they're going to give some of them e-books, when all of them will get in laptops, I really think that it's either the government doesn't think that our students and teachers and St. Lucians have a good brain, or that they are so busy speaking to themselves that they don't realize they understand. Madam President.
Senator, you're quoting from?
I only quoted from page 19 of the Prime Minister's budget.
We're on page 19 for the record.
Under education.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Under education, line 2, if I may read, in the area of education, Mr. Speaker, the government of St. Lucia views education as a basic human right.
Thank you.
Right? So I was using that phrase to emphasize that a basic human right ensures that there is equity in the distribution of resources. And that when you speak of a basic human right, that right has to be afforded to every single person in the situation, not to some. And that is why every single St. Lucian child had to be taken into consideration, and not selected schools. On what basis do you determine the selected schools? We saw it happen in the second day of office, when these same laptops that were taken away from our students were being given to specific schools. That is unequitable, Madam President, and it's not right. It's not right. Give everyone, even if you can give each of them a little bit. And if you have to give some, you need to justify why these should get and these should not. Madam President, I am still on that issue of the laptop because we cannot leave it alone just because we've mentioned it before. Repetition has its place in some cases. And I'm not repeating the phrase, but I'm speaking to the concept in terms of education. Madam President, we remember the infamous phrase of Ki Ganyi Ki Asa. We know who said that? Ki Ganyi Ki Asa, speaking to the use of laptops. What benefit is in laptops, right? And now there is a desperate bid by these same people to save face by giving our students e-books and coming to this house and boasting about how many e-books that they're giving children. Hypocrisy, Madam President. Hypocrisy. We need to stop. So there is no equity. And also there is a last-minute gimmick for the suitable replacement of laptops by e-books. Now, Madam President, I think if we are serious about that statement that was made by the Prime Minister, it needs to be demonstrated in our actions. I think by now, a government after 4 years, making pronouncements like that, should have been able to get, now that we use Zoom as a form of convening and interacting, making Zoom access available to all schools, free subscription, and that is not expensive, to all schools on the island, to allow teachers, principals, parents, and students to interact. That could be a very easy initiative that doesn't cost us all the money that we've been spending on all those things in the last few months. So, Madam President, that's a very simple suggestion, and I would present it in good faith and hope that the government can see the benefit in doing so. Madam President, I want to move to an area that I'm very concerned about because I was directly involved in the situation prior to becoming a politician. Madam President, after 4 years of a government saying that it's a government of doing, this government has done nothing, and I repeat, nothing, Madam President, to improve the condition of schooling and the school structure and facility at the Miku Secondary School, a school where I was principal for 10 years. Madam President, this is a school in the constituency of the Minister for Education in this country. And I remembered promises were made to build a new block. Madam President, 4 years later, not even that one single block on the Form 3 western wing of the Miku Secondary School has been built. But now you hear a promise of a new school, a brand new school being built. Yes, you couldn't build one block, you couldn't build one room in 4 years, but you'll build a new school now in 1 year. Haven't we heard that somewhere, Madam President, before? Haven't we heard that? You couldn't build one hotel room in 4 years, but you can build 8 hotels in 1 year. Haven't we heard that before? The same argument, Madam President. It is really shameful that we are hearing these kinds of things happening. And people expect us to believe that. But Madam President, I have some news for you. The people of Miku North, they have wisened up. They have wisened up. And this thing about building a model school in 1 year, after not having given them a room for their children in 4 years, is not going to be swallowed easily. Madam President, in spite of that being said, if you look at it a little further, there is actually no allocation in the estimates for that school. So, I mean, if there was an intention to even start the school, you would have expected in the estimates of expenditure to see an allocation. And I can point you to the estimates, Madam President, and tell you that if you look under the section that deals with allocations for schools, under secondary schools, there is only one secondary school where any allocation is made for. And Madam President, the only school is the George Charles Secondary School. We can refer to page 600 of the estimates, and you will find that there is an allocation for rehabilitation work on the George Charles Secondary School, page 600. That is the only school an estimate, an allocation was actually made for. But the government is coming to tell us now that they are going to build a brand new school in Miku in 1 year. And they couldn't build one room in 4 years. I leave that for the people of Miku North to deal with. Madam President, on Monday, we had another cohort of students who wrote the common entrance exam. And 2 of these students happen to be my children. So I'm very concerned about the next 5 years of their secondary education. Madam President, I remember coming to this Honorable House one September and making a strong plea. I even made a press statement to ask the government to pay attention to the preparatory works that had to be done at the Binfield Comprehensive Secondary School in Beaufort. And at that point, a promise was made that there was going to be a block, a new block built for the Form 1s. To date, Madam President, with all the $10 million I heard about this morning that was spent on education, $10 million. The children of Beaufort, Grace, Deriso, Miku, and Larry Schultz, and so on, are still housed at the Beaufort Primary School, the Form 1s. No block, no place for them. They are still sharing another compound with a primary school, our Form 1s. So when they move to Form 2 in September, the new Form 1s coming in, I need to know where the government has made provisions for us to put them. We're not going to put them in the stables, Madam President. They are not horses. They are dignified young people, and my children aren't going to no stables. I'm from the South. They are going to be placed in a school as dignified children. They have to be placed in a decent place, and I expect that the government will come good, because we do not have much time between now and September. And a cohort of students for any of the schools in the South would be anywhere between 60 and 120 students. So this is a serious matter. We need to stop playing games with our children. If you want to play your games on platform and you know, with your political rivals, that's fine. Don't play games with our nation's children. So, Madam President, the $10 million that has been boasted about, to this date, we have children sharing the compound of another school. And the same is occurring at the Miku Secondary School. We still have children going to class in the primary school. But you talk about $10 million. I'd like to know what has been done with that $10 million. What percentage of it has been spent on consultancies? Consultancies, retooling, retraining, telling teachers what they already know. You know? And then you say you're spending money. You have to get value for the taxpayers' money. If you're going to spend $10 million in education, there must be some kind of value. It must show that you're getting value for it. Madam President, this thing about we will do in quick time and we can get it done and give us time and wait your turn, this kind of rhetoric needs to stop. And we need to see serious action. Now, Madam President, I move to the final area in education. And I want to speak to the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. The Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, as we know it, is considered the island's most senior or premier tertiary and post-secondary institution. And we all know that it was named after our first Nobel laureate. So there is a lot of pride associated with this institution. Madam President, sadly, it is the worst that I've ever known it to be since I was a student there in the late 1980s and early 1990s. The worst. And I'll give you two examples why I say that, Madam President. From talking about transforming an institution to a full-time university college, we are now at a stage where staff of Sir Arthur Lewis, staff of the college, not even the students, the people who work there, are not even certain about their salaries. In April, almost 2 weeks into the new month, and nobody had gotten paid. And there are at least 30 persons, 30 teachers on the staff who got letters of notice in May. Now one will say that they are on contract. Yes, we understand, and sometimes contracts are not renewed. Yes, we understand. But it's an unprecedented number. And you know why, Madam President? Because some of the courses that were being offered have been terminated. They no longer offer. So if you were teaching building technology or you were doing information technology and they have terminated the course, there's no more work for you. But there's no justification. Nothing was given, no explanation as to why some of these were terminated. And you are talking about people with master's degrees who have worked hard, they have mortgages, out of a job. Somebody said it's building the new St. Lucia. That's not the St. Lucia that we want to live in, Madam President. That's not the St. Lucia we bargained for in the elections of 2016. Madam President, I want now to move to sports, an area that I must agree with my colleague senator that we both have a great passion for. And I must say that he was very truthful about his abilities and his achievements in sports, and I commend him. But I would be very worried, Madam President, if I were him, if he was a young man growing up now and playing sports in St. Lucia. Very worried. I'll tell you why, Madam President. The leader of government business, when I arrived this morning, the first thing I was able to pick up stated that we have a master plan for sports. Now, I don't know who she was talking about. I don't know if it's myself and those of us over on this side. But she said we have a master plan for sports. So I asked, what is the master plan that we have? And in her case, I would assume that she's referring to the government of the United Workers' Party. What is the master plan that the government has for sports? Is it an AstroTurf master plan? Because, Madam President, if you have to be truthful in this country, the only thing that a sports person can see and can hear of, and it was just re-emphasized by the last senator who spoke, is a semblance of AstroTurf all over the place. And I was a little disappointed hearing a sportsman who played cricket, basketball, football, track and field, high jump. The man was telling us in this honorable house, Madam President, that he wished he was playing sports because he would not have to wear six pegs. Madam President, AstroTurf is made for what sport? And FIFA president came here. Of course, I was a football administrator. Yes, footballers can play on AstroTurf under certain conditions. Madam President, it looks like St. Lucia has become a country where we only play one sport. The member played cricket, so where are the cricketers going to play? He was a high jumper. Madam President, this is absurd. In Deriso, you have a playing field that serves all different sporting disciplines are played on the playing field. And in most of our communities around the country, we do not have 7 or 8 sporting facilities available. We may have one playing field for an entire community of over 5,000 or 6,000 people. And you have different sporting disciplines. And I'm sure we have other persons on this side of the house who have a history in sports administration. They will tell you that in any given year or in any given environment, you have athletes who have different competencies. You have track athletes, you have netballers, you have footballers, you have people who play all kinds of sports. And year-round, you need to be able to allow everybody to get a fair share of the facility. So they play multiple sports on the facility. When you convert all our little facilities into AstroTurf, what are you doing? Madam President, this is crazy. I attended a meeting with the Cricket Association earlier this year in Miku. And the Cricket Association wanted to get ideas to develop its vision plan. And the number one talking point by the people of my community was that they were concerned about where they were going to play their cricket.
Senator, you have 15 more minutes.
I think I'll manage, Madam President. They were concerned about where they were going to play their cricket. Madam President, we must not forget that Darren Sammy is from Miku. The Darren Sammy that we talk about is from Miku, Diga Miku. Where was Darren Sammy going to play cricket to make it to the West Indies team if all we had in Miku was AstroTurf? Really? Madam President, this fairy tale sports academy thing, I want to get to it now. Madam President, there are parents that I know, especially from the South, who have withdrawn their children who had started going to this academy in Rosalie. Parents within the southern area, and they had their reasons. Madam President, I would like to propose instead, we are still in the early stages of this fantasy. Let me propose instead that we try to work with developing our athletes through the school sports program, from the primary school to the secondary school, work with the physical education teachers, give them better training and opportunities to improve themselves, bringing, if we have to, expert international level coaches, some like the Cubans that we used to bring here, who have a very good reputation in international sport, to work with those coaches to enhance their abilities and upgrade our primary and secondary sports program through the schools. And having done that, we will be able to identify our elite athletes, those who clearly are very talented, and use the academy to refine them and prepare them for international sporting competition, or national and international level competition. Because not every child is going to become a pro, but you need to give them some way of having at least aspiring to become a successful athlete. But you cannot just take students and send them to a facility where they believe that the academics are compromised and their parents pull them out, where they have issues with being able to move between the venue and home, and the logistics that are in place for them to stay over, they are not satisfied with. If you're not ready to start something, take your time and get it right. Madam President, I also want to remind this Honorable House that once upon a time, and downstairs we were talking about it during the lunch break, Deriso was a place where every weekend there was sports action. All kinds of people from all over the place came to Deriso. And we had quite a lot of sporting entertainment and competition going on there. When last did the footballers, the netballers, the volleyballers, the basketballers, the cricketers, the track athletes in that area have one tournament? And you know why, Madam President? Because the one little facility that they had to do that was just taken away from them, and it's being prepared to become some artificial turf and astroturf. And there's nothing going on. And we know that when young minds are idle, it's the breeding ground for deviance. And it will contribute to some of the social problems we have that we learned in the lap of the Minister for Justice. He doesn't need that headache now, Madam President. He's a former athlete. He understands the relationship between recreation and healthy sporting competition and discipline. Madam President, let me move now quickly because my time is of the essence. I believe that we can borrow a little bit from the Jamaica model and see if we can use the school sports program like they did without any of this fancy stuff to develop the likes of Usain Bolt. I'm telling you, Madam President, we could never have produced a Darren Sammy from Miku on artificial turf. We could never have produced a Johnson Charles from Millet on artificial turf. We could never have produced a Kimani Melius or a Laverne Spencer or Julian Alfred from Babono on artificial turf because they didn't play football. They did not make their name in football. Madam President, this kind of disjointed haphazard planning and execution is not going to work. And Madam President, it was disheartening for my former house captain at school, present Minister of Sports, telling us that all he has to say to his people is, you may not have anything, but you have me. You have me. After 4 years, all they have, or the government has to tell us that we have the Minister for Sports. I shall say no more on that. Let me move to agriculture quickly, Madam President, and the reason being, I am from a rural community of Deriso where agriculture is still the mainstay and the major income provider for many families. I will not talk about the shipping bananas to France issue because that has been deliberated on quite a lot, and the non-payment of farmers for weeks. But I will venture to say, Madam President, that my schoolmates from Angers, Blanchard, Chic, Tirocher, Lacouville, Diga, and so on, will tell you that they grew up and they were paid, their parents financed the education on the farmers' money. The farmers financed the education, myself included. It was the farmers and the fishers' money, Madam President, that sent them to school, primary, tertiary, and secondary. And most, if not all of us in that community still rely heavily on the proceeds from farming. So, Madam President, for the farmers and the fishers to survive, for example, those in Asia, they need to know what provisions the Prime Minister has made in his budget for them to sell the fish, because a lot of them still do spear diving. Madam President, they need to know that. And they're not interested in being given drinks at Nadi's bar. They need to know what is there in this budget for them as fishermen and farmers. Those of them who depend on cassava making and cashew nuts, selling cashew nuts at the Gap, they need to know what is there for them. Madam President, what provisions have been made for the Tirochet and Blanchard farmers who now have to think about license to sell charcoal? That's what I'm hearing. Or selling black pudding. Qui ça qui a budget là pour ces femmes avec ces péchés langers qui a fait toute qualité boire botan dit. Qui ça qui là pour yo en budget là? Madame Président. Madam President, can I get a time check, please? I just want to know if I...
4 minutes left.
4 minutes. Madam President, on page 15 of the Prime Minister, page 13 of the Prime Minister's speech, he spoke of youth in agriculture, page 13. And he spoke of training 78 young people in youth in agriculture program. And the stress or the operative word here was training. Madam President, training. Now, every time you hear training with this government, one of the things that comes to mind is
Senator
consultants.
Thomas Francis.
Madam President, thank you. I'd like to propose that we suspend standing order 35-1 to allow the honourable member an additional 15 minutes to complete his presentation.
The question is that the standing order be invoked to allow the Senator to have 15 more minutes to complete his submission. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it.
Thank you very much, colleague senators, for the additional 15 minutes. I promise you I will make very good use of it. Madam President, I was referring to page 13 of the Prime Minister's budget speech where he made reference to youth in agriculture. Now let me say, first of all, that when you speak of youth in agriculture, I think this is good language. This is exciting, this is good stuff. But what I'm concerned about is not just saying youth in agriculture, but telling us what exactly are you doing for youth in agriculture. So this speaks of training 78 young people in a youth in agriculture program. Madam President, I want us to juxtapose that statement against the hundreds of young people who were trained under the Farm Assistance Program, under the NICE program that we offered years ago, well, a few years ago. And I want to specifically remind the House that under that program, we had about, at least, not just about, at least 104 farmers who benefited from the youth who worked with them in that farm assistance program. And these youth were also trained, and there was a dual benefit. I'll tell you the two benefits. Madam President, first of all, the youth were trained. They worked on the farms with the farmers. They enabled the farmers to be more productive, and they themselves received some form of compensation for their work. So you have young people engaged in practical farm work, assisting farmers who benefit in turn. In fact, there's treble benefit. The farmer who gets the service of the young person, getting free labor, the young person himself being trained to provide the appropriate type of labor, and that young person also gets compensated for his efforts. Madam President, how can you replace that with anything from what I've heard there? How do you compare that to what the Prime Minister is talking about? So you just train them and what? You just train 78 young people, and you come and beat your chest in this house? And you're replacing what was going on where you had hundreds of people getting training, getting to do work and getting paid, and helping other people make money. And you're replacing that with training, and you come here to talk about that? Madam President, I believe that these benefits are greatly missed by the country. And the farmers in the community where I'm from, they are seriously affected. Now, Madam President, another problem that I notice we have not addressed in this budget is the issue of markets for our small farmers. It is thankful, I want to be thankful to two gentlemen in the community where I'm from who have provided some outlet to the farmers. They have provided a small market. They're private entrepreneurs who purchase produce from the farmers on a weekly basis. And as they say in Creole, Gwa merci, Monsieur Faisal, et Tony. Tous les mercredis, ces farmers Blanchard, Rocher, de Ruisseau, Angers, ils ont amené ça au produit, et puis c'est monsieur qui a acheté, ils ont joué l'argent, et puis ils ont fait la vie, ils ont vivre. Si c'était pour le gouvernement, ça là, ils n'ont pas tenu pièce côté pour vendre ces produits. Ça. Madam President, this is serious business. And this is what we need to see the government engaging in. Small enterprises, incentives for these people, and these two people I spoke about have received no incentives from this government to do what they're doing. They're assisting us in creating a market, a niche market, right there in the rural community. People can actually get their produce to them in 15 minutes. They get compensated within a few days, and they can live. They're not large farms. They don't have large farms where they can produce tons and tons of bananas and other things. But they can benefit directly from that initiative, and there are no, I will come here with SIs all the time, you know, I'm giving all kinds of incentives to big businesses. We need to look after the needs of these farmers in the small rural communities, because it's their only means of survival, especially in this COVID environment, Madam President. So, Madam President, I want to thank these two gentlemen again, Mr. Faisal and Mr. Tony, for the great work that they're doing, and I hope the government will find it fit to provide some incentives for them to enable our farmers to have somewhere to sell their produce. Now, Madam President, some of the farmers have also called, because I am in dialogue with them. I was raised on the farm. My parents, that's what sent me to school. So I talked to the farmers, and they've made suggestions that request that the government needs to have a coordinated approach to things like poultry farming in this area. We have, I purchased eggs, Madam President, from a young man named Zeus. He's my barber, so if I have a good haircut, thanks to him. Zeus, I purchased eggs from him, and I also purchased eggs from a young child from Angers, Nakala. Young child into her little private business. And this is an example of young people who are into small business, and they really have, some of them have struggled. But there is no organized group with similar interests to get them to have a way of guaranteeing that they can get sales for their produce. And that's where things like cooperatives come in. You know, the government can provide that type of leadership to ensure that there are small cooperatives, small groups within these communities that can harness the efforts of these people. They want to do stuff, but they don't always have the skills, and they don't have the facilities to put their ideas together and get their produce out of the way. But, Madam President, there's an alternative, and we'll see about it pretty soon. Madam President, I also want to say that there is an issue of land for farmers who want to, you know, to engage in productive work. Not every farmer can afford acres and acres of land of their own. That's the reality. And there are lots of farmers who actually work on other farmers' land. They work on other people's farms, and they get paid for their labor. But at the end of the day, they do not really have their own, you know, their own farm that they can call their own. And sometimes when things are slow, they get laid off and they have to go home, just like they do in the hotels. Madam President, I think it is important that the government sees it fit to engage in programs through the Proud program that is already in place to enable farmers to access land for agriculture and farming in these communities. They don't need 5 acres. Some of them just need a half acre so that they can actually have their own small farms and engage in doing what they can to support themselves. So, Madam President, what has happened now is that there's a false sense of security that's been provided with those projects that were spoken about, and announcements being made on the road that they're doing projects there and projects there after 4 years of doing nothing for these people. I want to move quickly to healthcare, Madam President. I want to say that the healthcare service in St. Lucia is not healthy at all. It is not. And from 2016, we've been hearing of health insurance. I heard about it this morning. Nice slides and glan showing all kinds of things. But right now, the reality is, Madam President, that St. Lucians are still perishing because of their inability to access CT scans, dialysis, and other basic amenities or basic health services that they need to survive. And you only have to ask the family of the late Vera from Chic about this. She was one of those who really had difficulty accessing some of those services, and may her soul rest in peace. Madam President, on page 18 of the Prime Minister's budget speech, he referred to, he said, and I quote, "Mr. Speaker, the most significant development within the health sector over the last 4 years was the move from VH to the OKEU hospital," unquote. Madam President, if that is the government's most significant achievement in the health sector for the 4 years, the most significant achievement is moving from St. Jude to OKEU. The government has COVID to thank for that. The government has COVID to thank for that because they have no choice. So, Madam President, the old rhetoric will come back about who took 5 years. The government has OKEU to thank for that. All the talk about health insurance, but then in the very same breath, the most significant achievement is something that was forced on the government by COVID. Not that they wanted to do it, because we know of the story of the Cayman Group, and all of that I do not want to go into right now. My time is too limited. Madam President, after all the lip service that was given to the frontline and essential health workers, the police, the fire officers, the nurses, the supermarket owners, and those who ensure that the country remained safe, for the exceptional work that they did, the government's only reward to them is duty-free vehicles being offered. And I heard the talk about it a while ago. That's the incentive that they didn't get during the negotiation, but is now being offered. Yes. Madam President, I want to ask the government, with what are these essential health workers and police officers going to purchase those vehicles? Are they going to use the 50% bonds to purchase the vehicles? Is that what they're going to purchase them with? Madam President, the only way you can benefit from duty-free is if you, in fact, purchase a vehicle. You can't benefit from duty-free if you don't purchase a vehicle. And how many of our present police officers, fire officers, nurses can actually purchase a new vehicle or used vehicle now in the environment that we live in, when banks are afraid to issue loans to you? And the banks, and we have the government talking about bonds. Your disposable income is going to be cut in half. You're not sure where you stand. You can't take bonds to the bank, and you're telling people you're giving them incentives on vehicles that they cannot even purchase. Madam President, I think the health workers know better. They know what would have suited them better, and let's leave that decision for them to make. Madam President, finally, I want us to round up by saying that clearly this government has once again failed to deliver on its promises to the people from 2016. Madam President, this government has failed to demonstrate a comprehensive plan for national development. They have failed to do so. Everything is bits and pieces. They come with documents and they flash them. They make pronouncements. We have a plan, we have a plan. But there is no evidence of the plan at work. Madam President, there was a 5-year mandate given to this government that they have failed to capitalize on. And now they want to do everything that they couldn't do in the 4 years in the final year. And so, Madam President, with 1 year left in office, the people of St. Lucia have realized the bluff. And they will not take it just like that. They have a plan. So the government does not have a plan, but the people of St. Lucia have a plan. And all I'm going to say to wrap up, Madam President, is that by the time the next budget address is laid before this House, or that is made, it may very well be that some of us on this side of the House will be delivering this budget from the other side of the House. So, Madam President, and we're not crossing the floor here. So, Madam President, just for clarity, we're not soft candles here. We're not crossing the floor. So, Madam President, I want to say that St. Lucians, whether they be professionals, farmers, teachers, all St. Lucians have given the government an opportunity to deliver. They have failed to do so. They have tried their very best to come and campaign in this honorable House in the last sitting, and St. Lucians have read through them. So I wish the government well in its final year, and I know that St. Lucians have realized what's going on and will make the right choice. Thank you, Madam President.